welcome to the program on a Wednesday afternoon, 12:09. The sun is shining out there. Amazing, amazing. It's actually above 40 degrees. I think this is spring. I think spring is here. Mayor, what do you think?
I think it is. I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention. I was downloading the WBSM app, Barry.
Absolutely.
And it looks like I've done it successfully. And it says right at the top, listen now, the Barry Richards Show. So if I turn this on, we might get feedback.
Yeah,
It would
absolutely.
really screw up the broadcast.
But, you know, it's a great little thing to have.
The WBSM app, so we can cut it for a promo.
Well, if I'm in the car, Tim, I would just turn on the radio itself, right?
Unless you're in Sheboygan.
Unless I'm in, if I'm in Washington, D.C. Yeah, so this is what I will use when I am out of range. And I am out of the station's range, which is pretty far anyway, especially easterly, right? Down the Cape. We have lots of listeners on the Cape and
Absolutely.
Martha's Vineyard.
Yep,
right?
the fishermen all listen to us out at sea. And
yeah, some of them can get it. Yeah, at least,
I was out in Fall River the other day and picked up the station very clearly out there. We get calls from Raynham, and we get calls from all over the place.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'll put that down and won't mess with it so we don't screw up your broadcast. But I'm doing things are good.
Well, that's good. Yeah. I was just noting the weather. The sun was out. And I saw you sauntering slowly across the parking lot, coming in, enjoying enjoying
taking
the nice
it
weather,
all
right?
in. Yes,
yeah.
that was me. Yeah.
Because it doesn't
enjoying the moment. Yeah.
It just seems to come and go, right?
I guess, at this time of year, Barry, I guess it should be warming up.
Yeah.
It's been a little slow. Yeah.
Normally this time of year, my Japanese cherry on my front lawn, all full bloom.
Yeah.
Flowers are up and everything. Nothing.
Nothing.
So.
Well, maybe you need a little more fertilizer. Maybe
can we do a proclamation,
like
in Camelot, the flowers must be up by April 11th.
Yes, I've been slow with that spring proclamation this year, but I'll work on it.
Well, this is Wednesday, so that means it's midweek with the mayor, Mayor Jon Mitchell, with us until 1 o'clock. We take your calls, of course, and we talk about some issues as well. 508-996-0500 is the phone number, and a lot of things going on. Fire this morning, unfortunately, out on Potter Street, a fatality involved in that. I haven't had a chance really to be up on it. What do you know at this point?
Well, I was over there. I went over there and spoke to the firefighters and the police and EMTs who responded. It's a sad situation. I know a little bit about the cause, but I think people would understand that because it's still under investigation. I don't want to comment on that. They're on top of it. I think it's fair to say there's no foul play involved. But beyond that, the fire marshal's office and the police department will get to a root cause, and they'll release that information when they're done. But it's a sad situation. It was it's a large family that lived on Potter Street in a very old farmhouse, and one of the children in the family was upstairs and succumbed to smoke inhalation, it appears, and perished at the scene. And so I had a chance to speak to some of the family members, some of the other siblings. That's a very sad situation, and again, I don't want to get into causes, but it does go to show that these things can happen really quickly. And so when the fire department talks to our residents and our school children in particular about making sure that you know where smoke detectors are, that you go through a certain set of protocols when you see a fire in your house. We should take it all very seriously because it can happen in an instant, and this particular family found out the hard way.
It's always amazing. I always find it amazing anyway when I go to the scene of a fire and see the professionalism and the ability that New Bedford's fire department has, and the police department and EMTs, all of them, in responding to things like this.
Oh, very much so. Yeah, well, our fire department is really excels, and I put them up against any fire department in America in this way at suppressing fires, getting on them very very quickly, and operating as a team and making really good decisions in the blink of an eye, instantaneously. And this was one where they just couldn't get there in time, and that that happened. This fire, I don't know that they knew, the folks inside knew. Again, I don't want to get into any of the details, but it happened very, very quickly, but our fire department performed very well, as they always do, and our police department followed up very appropriately and comforted the family, and our EMTs cared for some of the family members. But yeah, it's a lousy situation, but so I would just say to everybody out there, especially if you have kids at home, treat fire prevention seriously. Listen to what our fire department says about what you can do to make sure something like this doesn't happen to your family.
On the way into the studio, I stopped by the news department, and they told me about a body being discovered near the Cogswell Street Bridge. Do you know anything on that? I am sure they know more than I know at this point. But
no, I don't know the details. The Port Authority, the police, the fire department, the EMTs are all addressing that matter, and it's unclear what the cause of the person's death was and how long the person had been there, but they will investigate it, as they always do, and come up with an answer and let the public know.
Fairhaven Bridge, New Bedford-Fairhaven Bridge, your favorite spot on the planet.
Yes.
It's going to be closing. Has it closed yet, or is it closed this week sometime? Is it
the
closed?
State tells me, and again, I emphasize, it is the state's bridge on Route 6. It is going to be closed, and it'll be it'll be an unmistakable reminder of just how old and obsolete that bridge is, and how it needs to go, and that our folks who represent us in the state legislature need to push to get that replacement funded. So
when does the closure occur? Is it next week, or has it closed already? I'm not.
I think it's the 20th.
Kind of out of the loop I am on a lot of this stuff. I know.
Well, you will find out the hard way then.
I do, yeah. I have little tidbits of information.
Why are all these cars backed up?
Why is the bridge facing that way?
Yeah.
So what is the nature of the problem with the bridge? I mean, it's going to be closed to vehicular traffic, open to boat traffic, which is generally the case anyway when they work on it. So
right.
Are we trying to find another piece from 1890 that doesn't exist anymore, or what?
Yeah, it's a fair question. I don't know, Barry. That is the Massachusetts Department of Transportation operates it. They're responsible for repairing it, and they would be responsible for rebuilding it, as it should be rebuilt in a much more modern form, in a form that works better for motorists and even cyclists and pedestrians who use it, and especially for marine traffic. That bridge is a long time in coming. The replacement of that bridge is a long time in coming, and we continue to wait. And when it's stuck in the open position in a couple of weeks, we'll all be reminded of that yet again. This is not the first time it's happened.
What type of bridge would you like to see replace the current structure with? I mean, I know in the past they've talked about bridges that would be, go way up, and I guess you got to get a big arch bridge. You'd have to get a real running
bridge.
Start somewhere.
No, I don't think that's.
No,
that's not really under consideration.
Drawbridge.
Yeah, I mean there are two types. One is that could be possible. One is a vertical lift bridge, which, as the name implies, the platform of the bridge would ride up and down two tall towers, kind of like, I think most people would be familiar with the railroad bridge over the Cape Cod Canal. So when it's in the down position, rail cars can travel over it, but it's otherwise lifted up. In this case, it would be the other way around. It would ordinarily be in the down position, but when a vessel had to pass through, it would be up. The other option is what's called a double bascule bridge, which is effectively a drawbridge. I can't tell you what the difference is. I think they may be synonymous, but it's it's one of these bridges where the two platforms sort of just open up, kind of like the Paid-Neram Bridge, right? So, but except a bigger version of that. So, but the virtue of having either of those versions would be that the channel would be much wider and would allow larger vessels to go into the northern harbor, which would open up more cargo opportunities in that part of the harbor and create some more jobs. And it's so long in coming. I've told you, I wrote a term paper about the replacement of that bridge when I was in college. And by then it had already been in discussion for about 30 years. So it's unfortunate. The state's going to have to invest in it. About 3 or 4 years ago, we discovered that there was an old federal earmark to study the replacement of the bridge, and nobody had acted on it. And so we brought it up. I sort of banged the pots a little bit, and the state finally said, "Oh, okay, yeah, we'll take a look at it." So they did a study, which is now about 2.5 years old, to the tune of about $500,000, and they concluded that the bridge is functionally obsolete, and that it was.
And it took $500,000 to figure that out, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that it would be.
All they had to do was read your turn paper, and they would have known that, right?
You know, if I dug that out for them, I could have saved them $500,000. So, and they said that either the double bascule version or the vertical lift version would cost them the ballpark of about $100 million. But the kicker is that if you did nothing, the so-called status quo option, would be itself expensive. To just leave the bridge as it is in place would cost over the next 10 years roughly $46 million. So leaving things as they are would be expensive, right? Almost half as expensive as putting a brand new one in there. So I think it needs to happen, and we need to continue to talk about it so people pay attention.
But so far, it's a non-starter, though, right?
As far as I can tell, we haven't made too much traction on it, but it's discussions like this, Barry, over the airways, so everybody can hear it, that will, at the end of the day, make that new bridge a possibility. And I hope that, those who represent us in the state legislature are listening.
Is there money in the state, or is this going to have to be a federal job, do you think?
Oh, I think this is probably a state project. Yeah, I mean there might be some federal programs that would be available if Congress passed a big infrastructure bill. It would certainly be at the top of our list. That's certainly at the top of my list. But in the absence of that happening, there really isn't a federal program now that would be that would address it directly. I mean, there are some federal highway programs. There's the Tiger program, which is an acronym, TIGER, that is meant for all sorts of infrastructure projects, that supports all sorts of infrastructure projects.
Like the rail bridges.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like the North Terminal. That was our last application, which we didn't get, but we apply for those grants. This project is probably too big for that program. The grants that are ordinarily given out under that program, range up to I think it's about $15 million. So this at $100 million, the bridge replacement would probably be a little too big for that. So it's probably a state project.
And the other infrastructure issue is Route 18. That's about to shut down for about a week or so?
No, not that long. I don't think it's that long. This is
18 South, right?
Yeah, and then north. I'll get. If you guys don't have the details on that, we'll get them to you.
I think they do in there. I don't. Like I said, I'm out of the loop.
Yeah, well, that's primarily to knock down the old pedestrian bridge down by Division Street. That's a bridge that, I mean, as we've come to know over the years, is used mostly by homeless people, to sleep on in the middle of the night, and it's not used all that much by pedestrians. Those types of bridges don't get a lot of use these days. They were built, a lot of them that were built in the 70s and 80s were thought to be, they're thought to be an answer to, getting pedestrians out of traffic, right? Instead of dealing with, with design issues that center around cars. Let me see if I can be a little more clear about this. It was at a time when, urban design was all about the automobile, and so and not about pedestrians, and that's changed in the 30 years since then. We want more narrow streets and more walkable sidewalks and more walkability generally. But back then, the idea was let's move the pedestrians off the sidewalk and have them go over the cars, and it was never embraced. Not here, not in most places, except in places that have pretty high density, right, real big cities. So that thing hasn't been used. Like the one over by Melville Towers a few years ago, we knocked that one down too. I mean, that was used by some residents of Melville Tower, but still wasn't used all that much. And so
it takes you a week by the time you walk all the way up those ramps and across the thing.
Yeah, that's just it. And it costs a lot to maintain.
Yeah.
So I think people will, once that's gone as an eyesore, then we'll that whole stretch of 18 will look so much better.
All right, CIP. You've come up with a revised CIP because the
indeed.
council pretty much sent it back and said, look, love all these things you want to spend money on, but a bond for it, but we would prefer you spend more money on fixing the road. So
yeah,
what is your revised,
everything in there is about fixing things,
Yeah.
right? So whether it's roads or whether it's building, doing renovations on the exterior of the main branch of the library, or building a new elevator in City Hall because the one that we have is the oldest operating elevator in America right now. These are things that you have to do. And so, we have a limited amount of money to do these big capital repairs. And so we have to choose wisely. We started the road program last year. That was something that I had proposed to the city council, and the plan was to do $1 million for the city to spend $1 million on top of what we get in the way of state highway aid. And I'm glad that the city council is on board with the idea and is actually asking now for more, because that hadn't been happening before I proposed it last year. So it's great. But I think we need to have a discussion about a sustainable amount over a long period of time. The city has put money into roadways from time to time. It's usually been in times when there are lots of people complaining about the condition of the roadways, which is justifiable, but the city council's response and the certain mayoral administration's responses were, well, let's just throw some money at the situation, and then
it's election time. Let's fix some roads.
It's election time. You can't do that, and that's how our roads end up the way they are. We're not alone, by the way. I mean, if you look at other cities around the Northeast, frankly, they're in worse shape than us. But I think our roads can be made better, but it's going to take a sustained commitment to spending on them year in and year out until the condition overall across the city changes. And so that's what we're striving to do. But if you just throw a bunch of money at it one year and then forget about the next year, we'll be right back in where we were.
So there were things that you were seeking. I think the total was about, what, $5 million? So things you were looking for, like
6.1.
6.1. All right.
Now the total's 6.3. It's a little bit higher, but
all right.
not
So
much.
you were looking for money to do the old beach house down on the south end of the
Yes.
beach, fixing the elevator or replacing the elevator, the library, and there were some things that the council said, hey, let's put these off and let's spend more on roads. So what does your revised?
So we shaved back
recommendation?
on a couple of things. We pushed off work on the city garage until next year. So we took that piece of it out. The city garage needs updating, and it's not something that the public sees much of, but we're trying to modernize the way the city manages its fleet of automobiles. The city has hundreds of automobiles in police and fire and DPI and pretty much every city agency has a vehicle, and how we maintain those vehicles and how effectively they're used translates into money. And we're trying to bring ourselves and that part of city government into the 21st century at last, and that is going to entail some work on the garage, but that's going to have to wait. I prefer that it not, but I've made that accommodation. The other thing is that there is some work, a fair amount of work that we want to do on the grounds of New Bedford High School. Folks have heard me in school committee meetings and other settings say that at the top of my list of priorities for the school department is to make our schools more attractive so that more families want to send their kids there, right? It's one piece of a whole pie of things that people look at when they decide where to send their kids to school. But if the facilities don't look so great, then most families would be less likely to choose your particular school. So we want to make sure that in the case of New Bedford High School that the outside looks a lot better than it does now. It's come a long way in the last few years. We've invested in facilities to a great degree, but there's still some more work to be done. We have shaved that down a little bit as part of our accommodation to the city council. So we took off of a budget $830,000 for renovations to the grounds around the high school. We've shaved off about $150,000 or so. So I think we can still get what we need, most of what we need to be done at the high school with that amount. But it's going to be a little bit harder. But these are accommodations we've made. And then in exchange for that, I moved the budget for roads from $1 million to $1.6 million. So it's a 60% increase. It's a significant increase. And I think we want to come back next year and request more money for roads in the year after and the year after. And the question is going to be, how much is sustainable over time? That is the key, sustaining the commitment so that our roads don't slide back to a condition that's unacceptable to the public.
So the money for the library at City Hall, that remains in there?
That remains in there.
And the money for the boathouse, beach house. Not
yeah, in the case of the beach house, that look, I think, well, what a beach house? Do we really need that? Well, you have a building there, and the city owns it, and it's not like it can be sold to the private sector. It's right on the beach. We have to fix it. You can't just let the thing sit.
Can that be leased?
Deteriorate?
Can you lease the space?
You can, and we can generate some revenue, but it's not from that. And
can you imagine a Dunkin' Donuts in there?
Not a Dunkin' Donuts, but we might be able to. We might be able to lease that out for some things that you and I've talked about on the air, like a kayaking operation or some other recreational facility.
Not even a small Dunkin' Donuts.
Well,
I mean, everybody drinks iced coffee. Just think, if we get a quarter off every iced coffee,
I would rather see it. If we're going to do donuts, it should be a local donut outfit, and not a big chain. That's my take on it. But but I would be open to that. But it would be good to get revenue from that as well, and we fully intend to explore that. I think the reality is it will never be enough revenue to fix a roof that hasn't been touched in a couple of decades, right? So. Or to do the other renovations that have to be done inside. There are a lot, and so it's not as though the place would command a rent that would offset those expenses. So we've got to pick it up ourselves. And look, I mean, this is what happens. The city has 96 buildings, and many of them have not been maintained properly over the years. And we've over the last few years, gotten into the city into the practice of taking care of its stuff better. And you have to. I mean, it's easy for me. I mean, look, if I wanted to be the irresponsible approach, which has happened in the past in our city, would be, you know what? Nobody's ever going to notice if the roof deteriorates on that beach house. They're never going to notice if the city garage is falling apart because it's, off behind a fence somewhere. Nobody's going to notice if, an old school building's boiler, deteriorates so it's not useful because it's an abandoned or an unused school building. We've got a few of those. But that's irresponsible. People elected me to take care of the city stuff, to use taxpayer dollars wisely. And we're playing catch up. We're playing catch up from years of deferred maintenance, and we're making headway. But we've got to stick to it over a period of time, over multiple mayoral administrations, and because that's what our residents deserve, and that's what's necessary.
So this revised CIP goes before the council tomorrow night. Have you had any communication with anybody in the council?
I don't think it's tomorrow night. I think it's next week.
Is it next week?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, it goes in. It goes before the council. They'll kick it over to the finance committee for a hearing next week on the 18th.
Okay. So have you had any feedback at all from the council?
I have, and I have another meeting today with some of the councilors about it. I've made what I think is a good faith effort to compromise with the council, and we're trying to work through these issues. We all want our roads to be in better shape. We all want to take care of our buildings. And I tend to defer to the experts when I make my proposals, which are the people in DPI and DFFM who have to take care of these things and can tell me, well, this particular building needs work more urgently than the next building. They have. I don't come up with the idea that we need a new elevator in City Hall, for instance, or that a roof needs to be fixed. I listen to their recommendations. They know the condition of these buildings. And so I defer to them, and that's so that's what we're trying to do. And what the public should know here is that the city's not gold plating anything. I would love to be building. I think I've told you I'd love to be building a brand new city hall, because ours is kind of old and obsolete in some ways. I'd love to be building a brand new police headquarters. We're not at that point yet. In a few years, maybe the city will be at a point, having done all this maintenance work and taking care of the roads better, we'll be at a point where we can start to consider those things. But we've got to work through these more urgent issues first.
All right. City Council also gets, I believe the Ordinance Committee gets tomorrow. This council votes on the ordinance first reading tomorrow night, I guess, on the stricter penalties for the landlords or the enforcement for the absentee landlords. Council gets that tomorrow night?
They do, and they voted it out of the Ordinance Committee. I think it may have been unanimous.
Yeah.
If it wasn't unanimous, it was close to unanimous. So, which is great. I'm glad that that was a good example of how the administration and the council worked through some new proposals well, and had a good exchange of ideas, and I expect all those things to pass well. So those are three things: an improvement to the problem property ordinance, which lowers the threshold of complaints, after which the cost of police responses has to be borne by the landlord. It'll go from 8 down to 4. The second one has to do with the requirement of owners who don't occupy their rental properties to post their name and contact information inside in a common area in a very visible place. And the third has to do with the city's clean and lean ordinance. That has to do with when we have a property that's a complete mess with garbage strewn all over the place, or worse. We'll go in, we'll give notice to the landlord that they have to clean it up. But they have 14 days after they receive the notice, and sometimes it's hard to track those people down. So a lot of times it takes a while to get that process going. Now we've shortened it from, I had proposed shortening it down to 5 days. The council said, no, make it 3. And I was like, great, make it 3. So it's down to 3 days now. So this is going to get properties cleaned up faster. And if they don't, when a property owner doesn't bother to follow through, the city will go in. I think we've been using private contractors for this recently. Clean it up, and then we'll put the tab on the landlord's deed, and that's how we've pursued it. So it's worked. I think if you drive, I'd like to think. I mean, as I drive around the city, I think the city looks a lot cleaner. There's still some places where we have to improve, but there are fewer, as I've driven around the city over time, there are fewer properties that are a complete mess. And so we have to, again, this is, much like, the process around maintaining city-owned buildings, we have to build practices, institutionalized practices of just keeping things clean, of enforcing trash laws, especially in, on houses that are not owner occupied. That seems to have been the long-term source of persistent source of a lot of the trash problems in the city, and I think we're making headway, and we're going to continue to work at it. This
is a nice segue into what I was going to ask you next. Councilor Lima, Ward 5, the new city council, posted some pictures this week on Facebook from Buttonwood Park, and I guess there's a problem up there with litter, homeless folks, needles, a lot of garbage up there, and he's looking to get some answers to that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I can't say that I've read his Facebook site. I have a good relationship with Councilor Lima. If we see something like that, I mean, I'll talk to him. But if anybody sees needles or an encampment somewhere, they should just call the police, and it'll get cleaned up. The most direct way for anybody, especially a city councilor, to do that is just to pick up the phone and call either the problem property task force or DPI or the police. Primarily, the starting point should be the police, but it will get cleaned up.
The other point of his post was about the foul. How do we put this? You
asked me to comment on this. I haven't even seen the Facebook post. I have a sense of where you're going with this, Barry.
the little droppings from the fowl, the geese and everybody that hang out up there. So
okay,
that
yeah.
fowl, yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess that's been a problem for a while in terms of the water quality and even in terms of the grass and that area.
I don't know that it's affected the water quality at the pond, but it's been a complaint of the neighborhood along Lake Street over the years. Yeah,
He
we
mentioned
don't know what to
looking for
do with
a
that except
humane way of
so
trying to find a humane
not
way
a
to-
shotgun, something.
Not a shotgun.
Yeah,
No.
yeah. I'm not sure we have a good answer for that, but I'm open. I'm open to suggestion.
All right.
Yeah, I know people have complained about that. I don't know if you want to, we have like a sheepdog run out and
Yeah. Goose poop.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember this. Remember Isidore Eisner, who used to be the airport manager some years back?
I remember
Isidore
the
Eisner.
name.
Yeah. He used to have a problem with seagulls on the runway that would, threaten the airplanes as they were coming in, getting caught in the engines and that kind of thing. So he used to drive up and down the runway in his car with a loudspeaker of tortured seagull sounds. And I do not make this up. This is the truth. Anybody listening that can verify this, please do. But
he was doing an impersonation?
Well,
over a
I'm not
loudspeaker?
quite sure, and I'm not quite sure where we got the tortured seagulls
from
from.
an
Whether
an 8-track tape of tortured seagulls.
but that would scare the seagulls off, and they wouldn't come back. So I don't know. Maybe we can do that with some.
Yeah, somebody must have a clever idea. Yeah, I'm open. I'm open to it. It could be one of these crowdsourcing things, Barry. You throw the problem out there, and people can,
How do
call
you
in
get
with
rid
the
of the geese?
solutions.
I mean, the
yeah.
geese are nice. Everybody likes to see the geese and all that, but there is geese poop everywhere, right? I mean,
Yeah, there is.
there is. All right, let me take a break. 508-996-0500. If you got a solution to the goose poop problem, give us a call. And we'll
I'm glad we're talking about such things today.
Yes, right.
Could be worse.
We'll be right back after this. And we are back. 12:42 is our time. 508-996-0500. The mayor is with us until 1 o'clock. So let's grab a couple of calls when we get into some other issues as well as we go on. So let's go right over here. And you're first with the mayor this hour. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Mayor Mitchell.
Good afternoon.
How are you today?
I'm well, Celine. I hope you don't mind that I just mentioned your name, but it's just good to hear from you.
Mayor Mitchell, when I picked up the paper Monday and saw all these outstanding real estate taxes, there's a lot of seniors, including myself in this city, that pinch pennies, go without to pay our taxes faithfully. How is it that some of these taxes that are owed are back to 2009?
Yeah.
There's got to be a better way, Mayor Mitchell, to have somebody collecting these taxes.
Yeah, well, that's a fair point. I didn't take a good look at the list. I know that, as you know, the city's been doing that list for a long time, or lists like that. And what the treasurer's office in the last 2 or 3 years has done differently is that they've have sold off the older tax liens to a collection agency. This is something that cities, certainly in Massachusetts and beyond, do routinely, but New Bedford never did. And that way, you don't have a really long backlog. So that's reduced the backlog significantly. It can get you guys, everybody listening, and you, Barry, the numbers of how much the tax backlog has dropped in the last few years, but it's been significant because we've done these 2 tax sales. And believe me, I take no pleasure in doing that.
I know.
But it's not, to have, I mean, some people fall behind for, very, understandable reasons. But, to your point, Celine, with many people who are paying taxes in the city, they look at that, others falling behind and say, well, you're not doing I'm doing my part, you're not doing your part. It can be frustrating. So
right.
It's for that reason why we do the tax sales.
There's a lot of people in that article that have 3, 4, 5 parcels. And, I mean, thousands and thousands of dollars. And there's some people in there that I know that are on a trip somewhere. There's something wrong with that, Mr. Mayor. There has to be something done about that.
Yeah. So it's probably, Barry, it's probably not a bad idea to have Ari Sky, the CFO, on at some point so he can talk a little bit about that, because it's obviously taxes are an issue that affect
maybe
just
John
about
can set
everybody.
that up for us. John's already working on it. Okay.
Yeah. So,
love to do that.
but we just know that what we have been able to chip away at much of the backlog, because we started 3 years ago now, with a process by which the tax liens are collected by private parties, because the city doesn't have the capacity to keep up with its in-house staff, and that's enabled us to greatly reduce the backlog. The other thing that we do is we put a lot of people on payment plans, and that's helped out.
All right, thanks for the call. Appreciate it, my friend, very much. Let's move to another call. You're up next on WBSM with the mayor. Go ahead.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor.
Good afternoon.
I need you to get off your speakerphone. Pick up your phone.
Okay, I will do that.
Okay, there you go.
Okay. What I wanted to say is, when your street starts becoming more patched than street, I'm now getting... it looks like Beirut out there, but that's because the winter has ended, and I understand that. And there are huge stones that are coming out of the street that are being kicked up when people go up and down Campbell Street. I keep calling, and they tell me, I say, when am I going to have my street at least covered, not just patched? And, oh, you're on rotation. I've been on rotation since '94 when I bought the house. I called the Nissans who owned the home before me for 30 years, and they said no work had been done on the street in the 30 years they lived here. So we're looking at, almost 60 years that...
All right, let me give the mayor a chance to respond. Campbell Street, is that on the list of streets to get done?
I'm sure it is. Yeah, no, look, as we discussed earlier in the program, the city historically has not kept up with the needs of the maintenance needs of our streets, and so that's why we've just put a new program in place. I mean, I can't sit here and say it's all going to be fixed in the next couple of years. It's going to take a while, and in the meantime, because there is such a backlog, there are over 300 miles of streets in the city. And we if we have a program in place, eventually we're going to catch up. I wish it weren't the case. I wish the city had been keeping up, for many years. But the reality is it hadn't. And shame on me if I didn't attempt to address it. But we are addressing it, and it is something that we will have to stick to, not just while I'm there, but for good thereafter.
All right, thanks for the call. 508-996-0500. You're on with the mayor. Go ahead.
Yes, can you hear me okay?
We can hear you loud and clear.
Good. Here's the deal. Thank you for putting that tree back out over at St. Anne's Church on Brock Avenue.
I didn't personally do it, Al, but I'm glad we can make it happen.
Okay, another thing. There's a military memorial in front of that church, the flags are missing. And the barrel for the bus stop for that area is still missing. And there's a doctor's office just up the street next to a Spanish restaurant. That place, that area is like a pigsty with a lot of garbage there.
All right, we'll look at that.
I'm going to suggest that when you get off the air to go and take a look at that yourself.
Okay.
And it's ridiculous. And last but least, I went to my friend's house for Easter. Part of Brock Avenue needs to be taken care of. It's getting really, really bumpy.
All right, Al.
All right, Al.
Everything's been written down. Appreciate it very much. Thank you, sir. All right, before we go to break, stay on the line. We'll give you a chance to chat with the mayor. Before we go to break, I wanted to make sure we asked about this. And I guess a coalition of folks in the fishing industry have written a letter to the governor, and they're suggesting basically that we have a smaller offshore wind rollout and then possibly even delay some aspects of it. What's your reaction to that?
Yeah, I think it's great that the coalition has spoken up, and their primary recommendation is that the New Bedford Port Authority act as the mediator, which makes all the sense in the world, and that is because the place where these two industries will intersect more than anywhere else will be New Bedford. We are, as everyone knows, the biggest commercial fishing port in the country, and our share of the fishing industry on the East Coast is only growing, with many more out-of-state boats coming here. But we're also about to become the place where the American offshore wind industry launches from. So these two industries are going to be intersecting here. They are going to be intersecting out at sea, and we want to make sure that the concerns of fishermen, which are very legitimate, are heard well. I've said before, and I'll continue to say, these two industries can and should coexist successfully right here in New Bedford. We want them both to succeed.
The industry folks are saying that they haven't been given enough of a voice in all of this. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I do. I do, and that's why we're prepared to do something about it. There are two sets of concerns that the fishermen have. One has to do with safe navigation through wind farms. The other has to do with the siting of new wind farms and whether they might intrude upon traditional fishing grounds. So on both of those scores, we've been at the table. The Port Authority. I am in my capacity as mayor, the chair of the Port Authority, and so we've been in the mix of those discussions. But I think the wind developers have to do a better job taking the fishermen seriously, and we're going to work on that, and we're going to make sure that they are taken more seriously, because we don't want to have fishing vessels colliding with windmill towers. We don't want new farms to be built on places where scalloping is taking place in earnest. That's why the city sued the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management a couple of years ago because of where they wanted to put a New York wind farm. That lawsuit is still pending, but it's slated to go in an area where there's been a lot of scallop fishing over the years. So in any event, I'm glad to see the governor has said that he respects the fishing industry's interests and will make sure that they have a voice. And I hope that the offshore wind companies are listening. Those developers know that we really want them to succeed, but I think the fishing industry knows that we have their back as well. And I think that these conflicts can be worked out, but it's going to take some effort.
Did you have a chance to meet with the governor yesterday when he was in Westport?
I did. We talked about this, about the concerns of the fishing industry, and I told him that I think we need to have a longer discussion about that. And I talked to him about a couple of other waterfront-related issues, about dredging, for instance, which is at the top of my list, and that's something I've pushed the state very hard on, as you know, over the last 3 or 4 years.
All right, let me take a break. We'll come right back with your calls for the mayor. Stay with us. All right, it's midweek with the mayor, and we have a few more moments with the mayor, so let's get another call. And you're next on WBSM. Thanks for hanging on.
Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Hey.
Good afternoon.
Hey. On the issue of the geese, it's easy enough to make light of the situation. But I'll tell you, I had about a half dozen of those beggars with my chickens. You don't want to let those things out of the pen. They give you a gift that doesn't weather very easily. Also, the gift that they give, from what I understand, is that it gives they transmit roundworms with this stuff. That having been said, I think anybody knows that if you walk around the Buttonwood Park Pond, you can't get within 10 feet or 15 feet of the water on the Brownell Ave side without stepping in this stuff.
Yeah.
Whether it's solid mess or just parts of it. And as far as being on the other side by the warming house, forget it.
Yeah. No, I'm not.
What I'm asking is it fair to say that we have to live with the physical stuff because the political and financial crap that we would have to deal with if we actually did something about it is more expensive?
Well, I don't know. I just don't. I don't know what the solution is. I mean, I'm open to any. I mean, if you have any suggestions, we should certainly consider them.
City Council needs to form a special committee on this. The committee on goose poop, and I don't mean to make light of the situation because I mean
it is a problem.
It is a problem.
It is a problem. There's no doubt. I just don't know. Short of I don't know what you do, but I think I'm fair to say I am game for trying something new. Game, foul.
Yeah.
That was a foul.
All right, yeah. Let's go to the next call. You're next at WBSM. Go ahead.
Mayor Mitchell, how you doing?
I'm all right. How you doing?
Hey, listen. All the question I have for you is, what did they do with the money from the surcharge they put on our taxes? That's been about 2 or 3 years, and
you're talking about
nobody ever says what they do with it.
Oh, the Community Preservation Act.
I guess.
I think
whatever.
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, good question because it's it's taken some time to do something with that, but some of it's been out in the news. There'll be more in the news, I suspect, in the next couple of months. But under the Community Preservation Act, a committee is formed that is appointed by the mayor, confirmed by the city council, that decides where the money goes. And there are basically 3 places where the money goes. One is for historic preservation projects. Second is for parks and recreation. And third is for affordable housing support. So the Preservation Committee it takes a little while to set all this stuff up. And the Preservation Committee has been meeting for the last several months. And I think, as I understand it, and I don't control this process, it's sort of separate from city government, but they are, as I understand it, they're close as in the next few weeks in making decisions about what to fund. And so that'll be announced to the public. They've had some public hearings they've had along the way. And I know there are both some really good park projects as well as historic preservation projects that they're considering right now. But you're right, the money's been coming in, but it's allowed them to pick some pretty good projects that I think everybody in the city will like.
But that money is still set aside in the bank account. It hasn't been spent on...
no, it hasn't been spent. No,
new curtains for City Hall or anything. I mean, that money's still there, right?
Yeah, the kegerator for the mayor, right? Nothing like
diapers
that.
for the geese.
Yeah, diapers for the geese. No, the money's still there, and it's going to be spent on on projects that fall into one of those 3 categories.
All right, I guess we're pretty much out of time. We've got AHA next tomorrow, right? I say AHA is back, but I mean it actually does go on right through the winter. But
it does, but in the spring it really starts to ramp up.
Yeah, so now more people can hang outdoors and do that kind of
stuff. Yeah, it's good stuff. Yeah, we'll see you out there.
All right, don't forget to go by where Al told you to go and check out the letter.
Yes,
and
yes, right away.
We'll see you next week.
All right, thanks, Barry.
See you on the other side of the news, everybody. Stick around.